And gentlemen, girls and boys and assembled company, welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe. And tonight, or this afternoon, or this morning, wherever you are in this big, wide world, it is the worldwide story round, and we're a bit worldwide today. I'm looking at the screen and I can see Washington DC, I can see Greece, I can see Scotland, I can see Morocco, and I can see
Scotland again.
Yeah, Scotland again, and then somewhere on the Welsh-English border, just on the English side. So I'm going to, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our host tonight from Get a Word in Edgeways, Mr. Mike Rust.
Thank you very much, John. And we've also got someone in from Lincolnshire, and Wally from Marrakesh. Go on, wave, Wally, because everybody else, he just ignored you completely.
No, he did. Really? He waved.
Right, so I'm going to put a batting order together because John has very kindly said he was going first. So John's going to go first. Then Donald, would you go second? Right, Donald, you're second. And we'll stay in Scotland for the third one. So Diana, if you go third, and Despina 4. And that's Keith 5, and we'll take it from there, see what the time is from there. Right, okay, it's lovely to be here again.
Babasee's not getting on tonight, is he?
Yes. Of course he is.
That's all right. So do you want me to start?
I do, when you stop interrupting.
Okay.
So I'd like to just say welcome to everybody, particularly the two good-looking ladies, before Baba gets here on top of us. Okay, so I'm going to sit here like I always do on a Sunday, once a fortnight. We've got all night. We can take as long as we like. So I want your good stories and your best stories. I can't do this without you people coming and doing this stuff for me, and it's absolutely brilliant. I always look forward to it. So John and I were speaking about 20 minutes ago, so I asked him to go first. You're never quite sure. He's such a talented person, young and good looking and all the rest of it, whether you're going to get poems or stories or anything. So I don't know what he's going to do. And so we'll go from John, and number 2 is Donald, and we'll take it from there. So over to you, Mr. Rowe.
Well, I thought I'd do a story tonight. And it's one of the first stories I put in my head, because a million years ago, well, probably somewhere around the 80s, I was going to write a book about a time traveler. So I thought, I'll live it out. So I never wrote the book, but I did become a storyteller. And so I found I thought I'll live it out and I'll walk. So I dressed myself up as a medieval peddler, and I walked around East Anglia, and I wouldn't accept lift from cars, and I only stayed in places with trades that I would have recognized, like leather workers and musicians and inns and so forth. And I put a pile of stories in my head for the I wasn't calling myself a storyteller at that point, but I did put a pile of local stories in my head to do with the walk. And so this is and I called myself I named myself after one of the characters in the stories, a character called Samuel Partridge, who was from Beccles. And this is a sort of a rat story, a bit of a Pied Piper story, but it's a Norfolk version. And it's kind of interesting because in the story is a watchmaker, which means, and in the church records of Beccles, it talks about 3 martyrs of Beccles. So, and that was from about 1500, and portable clocks weren't invented till about 1430. So somewhere around that time, I should think this story is based. That's a bit of nonsense to start it off. So, and way back in time, probably around the time I mentioned, there was a plague of rats in Beccles. You opened the trunk, and not that kind of trunk, but a kind of a chest trunk, not that kind of chest, but and there's and a rat would leap out, would have eaten half your clothes, and you'd open your lunchbox, and there was nothing in the lunchbox. It was of course they weren't plastic lunchbox and that side. They were sort of great metal lumpy things, and rats everywhere. And so I'm just gonna. Oh, she's so embarrassed, and it's okay. We're live. We can stop and start. Anyway, and at the time at the town square, there were three men. There was Samuel Partridge, a peddler. There was a tallow chandler, and a watchmaker. And they were the sort of blokes that sat around and they were always going to make their fortune. You've met them. And they'd say, it's all right, it's okay, I got a scheme. And so and down the river at that time, there was Nancy Driver and her two sisters. And the town disapproved of Nancy and her sisters. They got up to all sorts of things, and occasionally they'd send a Port Reeve down, who was like the like a sheriff, like a sheriff for Battersea's point of information, and and he'd go and complain about their goings on, and the people in the town would have flies in their pies for weeks afterwards. But old Samuel and his mates really got on with Nancy, and so they popped down and they said, we can make a penny or two out of these rats. And so they went down and they said, Nancy, we need a spell. Nancy said, you can have one. It'll cost you 1 mark in advance. Now, a mark was worth about 18 and sixpence, about $1. And and there's no one here, well, there's no one on the UK side here. I probably have to explain what 18 and sixpence was. But so there's yeah, okay, about $1, Matt Battersea. I don't know what it is in Greek money, but well, euros, it'd be about the same now. It'd be just a little under €1. So the next day they went and they knocked on the Port Reeves door and said, think we can get rid of your rats? And he said, yeah, right, how much will this cost me? They said 15,000 marks, 1 mark in advance. He said, I'm not going to pay you 3 scruffy looking Herberts through 15,000 marks. Get out of my office, please yourself, said Samuel. And they walked towards the door. Port Reeves thinking, actually, you know, it was a port, and they were eating all the grain, and the rats, and, you know, it was wrecking the economy of the town, and 15,000 marks, it was worth it. And if they didn't, they were only going to get 1 mark in advance. So, all right, change my mind, 15,000 marks. That was 2 minutes ago, said Samuel. Price has gone up, 30,000 marks, 1 mark in advance. That would make you the richest people in the area. Get out of here. Please yourself, said Samuel. Walked towards the door. He does the maths in his head. All right, 30,000, that was 2 minutes ago, said Samuel. Price has gone up. 45,000 marks. Well, he's about to open his mouth, and I know us blokes are a bit slow, but eventually we catch on. And he realised that every time he opened his mouth, the price went up. He said, okay, 15,000 marks, 1 mark in advance. Well, that night, they were up in the town square with their glockenspiels and their drums and the things to bash and their things to blow. And they were shouting, come out, you rats, come out, you mice, come out, you fleas, come out, you lice, and obey the mandate all. From neath your nest, come out of doors and answer to the call, and the rats and the mice and the fleas and the lice came out, and they followed them in a great procession down to the river. Now, I know they call us silly and stuff, but we aren't that silly. Because we heard that German story, and we know about them drowning the rats in the river. Now, if anyone's ever watched a barn full of rats migrate, and they come to a river, and I did watch this, it was in the snow, and I saw these little black objects sort of just leaping around the snow and these little things. And I had my pet beagle with me, and it started chasing after them. Silly thing, hated water, and all the rats leapt into the river and swam across really quick. And my beagle didn't realise that snow collapses if you stand on it, and so it fell in the river. And I wasn't going to go in after it, so I grabbed a stick and got it out. So yeah, but the point is that rats swim really well, and all that business about drowning the rats in Hamelin is complete nonsense. So down by the river, they built this huge fire, and into the fire went the rats and the mice and the fleas and the lice. Beccles was clear of vermin. Now, they'd learnt a thing or two from that story in Hamelin, and they realised if they didn't pay the piper, no good would come. So the next day, on the Portreeves table, was 45,000 marks, less one. But those three pipers, those three men, Samuel Partridge and his two friends, never turned up to collect. But if you happen to go down to a bend in the river in Beccles, at this time of year especially, and you stand there at midnight, if you're very lucky or unlucky, depending on your point of view, you'll see the shadows of the rats and the mice and the fleas and the lice and the three pipers of Beccles as they make their way to the river.
Oh.
What about the
thank you,
money?
John.
Will you find the money there as well?
They put back, they sent that back.
You know, John Rowe, once a Scot, always a Scot. You know what I mean?
Hey,
You've got what we would call in Scotland the gift of the gab, John. You know what I mean? Like we've got the gift of being able to talk well, like a storyteller, like that kind of thing. The gab.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. It saved me from working properly all my life.
I've heard of that story, John, but I've never actually heard it before. There's not many. Well, there's loads of stories I haven't heard before, but I have heard it. It's lovely to hear it. Thank you very much. It's lovely to hear it in a proper accent as well, from the place that it comes from. So that was lovely. Thank you very much, mate. Right, so we're going to go to Donald and then Dinah. So we're going to stay up, go to the Highlands and stay in the Highlands. Okay.
hello. Hi, everybody. Well, I'm going to tell a Russian story, but I won't be doing it in a Russian accent, so don't worry about that. And this is my take on it. Quite a well-known Russian story, and it's about a dog called Shiro, and Shiro was getting old. Shiro lived in a farm, and he used to round up the sheep, and he would do all sorts. He would chase the rats and catch the rats, and he would do all sorts of work in the farm. But he was getting old, and he would just lie in front of the fire all day, go outside to do his business, plod back in again, lie in front of the fire. Now the farmer and his wife, they just had a baby. And the farmer, well, he wasn't doing all that well. And he said to his wife, look, we've just had a baby, and you know how expensive babies are. And that old dog there, it just lies in front of the fire. And I can't afford to feed it and look after it. And, you know, what if the dog takes sick? We're going to have to get the vet in, and we'll have to do something about it. So the next day, he put Shiro on a lead, and he took Shiro into the forest. And as in all good stories, it wasn't just a forest, it was a deep, dark forest. And he tied Shiro to a tree, and then he wandered away home. Now poor old Shiro's tied to the tree, doesn't know what's going on, and eventually he thinks to himself, I've been abandoned. He wasn't very quick in the uptake. I've been abandoned. What am I going to do? And then he hears a voice. Hey, mate. Hey, "Ah, see what happened to you." And he looks round, and there's a wolf. And the wolf says, "I know what's happened to you. I was outside your house, and I heard the farmer saying to his wife he was going to get rid of you. And what he's done is he has taken you out and tied you to the tree, and he's left you to the elements." And the dog said, "I didn't think he would ever do that. I mean, I loved living in that house." And the wolf said, "Well, I've got a way that you might be able to get back into that house." "Tell all," said Shiro. Well, the wolf said, "It's harvest time coming up. And at harvest time, everyone in the household and everyone round about goes to the fields and they harvest the corn or the turnips or the potatoes or whatever. And if everyone's going to the fields, they're going to have to take that baby to the fields. And what they'll do is they'll leave the baby in its cradle at the side of the field, and then they'll all go and work. Now, this is my plan. When they do that, you you hide in the bushes next to the baby, and I'll creep up and I'll pretend that I'm going for the baby. And as soon as I get near the baby, you jump out and start to bark. And then you bark and bark and bark, and I'll run, and you chase me right into the forest. And then when you come back, they will be so grateful to you that they will let you back in the house. Oh, that's a bit far-fetched, that, said the dog. I don't think that'll work. Well, if you don't think it's going to work, why don't we try it? And it just might. So sure enough, next day they were ready for the harvest. And everyone in the household went out to the fields. And of course, they laid the baby next to the field. And the dog went and hid in the bushes. And the wolf crept slowly towards the baby's cradle, lying there at the side of the field, while everyone was right away at the far end of the field. And just as the wolf got to the baby, it opened its jaws, its big teeth, its dribbling mouth. And Shiro jumped out of the bushes and started to bark. Everyone turned round, saw the wolf near the baby, saw Shiro running out, saw the wolf running away, and Shiro chasing behind into the deep, dark woods. And the wolf and Shiro stopped in the woods, caught their breath. And then Shiro walked back out. And when he walked back out of the woods, he saw everyone from the field at the side, round about the baby's mum, holding it. And the farmer turned round and saw Shiro. And he said, "Shiro, it's you. Thank goodness for that. You've saved the baby's life, Shiro. I am so sorry. I'm sorry for what I did. I was just so desperate. I wasn't thinking. Please, I'll take you back to the house." And that's what he did. And he took Shiro back to the house. And Shiro's allowed to lie in the fire all day long. He was allowed to go outside to do his business and come back and lie in front of the fire. And he was fed as well as the farmer could. And he had a good life, a pretty good life. Now, one day, Shiro was out doing his business. And again, he heard the voice, "Hey, mate, hey, over here, at the edge of the woods." And he looked round, and there was a wolf. And the wolf said, "So, are you enjoying your time back in the house?" "Oh, it's great, said Shiro. "I get to lie in front of the fire all day, and I get to go outside and do my business, and then I come back in, and the farmer's wife, she gives me bowls of milk, and I get all the leftovers. Not that there's many leftovers, because they don't have much, but they give me what they can, and I'm really well treated." "Well," said the wolf, "I'm still out here in the woods, living here, and I think you owe me a favour." And Cheryl said, "Well, a favour, what can I do for you?" And Wolf said, "Well, it's going to be the baby's christening soon. In fact, it's this Sunday. And at the christening, they'll have a party after it for the baby in the farmer's house. And all the neighbours will come from all around and they'll bring what they can. There'll be lots of food there. There'll be beef, there'll be lamb, there'll be pork, there'll be milk, there'll be all sorts of. I want you to get me some of that." And Cheryl said, "Well, okay, I'll do my best, but I don't know how I'm going to get it because they'll see me trying to take it out of the house and they'll stop me." "I don't think so," said the wolf. "But I'll tell you what, why don't I hide in the house?" "How are you going to do that?" said Cheryl. "Well," said the wolf, "I've seen these parties before and they cover the table. They get a big long table and they put it in the house and they cover it with a big tablecloth that reaches right down to the floor. Now, if I hide underneath that tablecloth, you can just slip me some food." "Great idea. Fantastic idea," said Cheryl, but he was still a bit nervous about it. And that's on the Sunday. The wolf sneaked into the house, hid under the tablecloth, and the neighbours came. And I said there was beef and there was lamb and there was pork and there was beer, and of course, being in Russia, there was vodka, and there was all sorts of fancy desserts, pavlova, and all sort of lovely stuff. And the party started. And Cheryl looked around, and everyone's enjoying themselves, talking away. And he went up onto the table, and he took a leg of lamb down. And as he went to go under the table, one of the guests shouted, "Hey, farmer, look, the dog's stealing a leg of lamb." And the farmer said, "Don't worry about it. That dog can have anything he wants." And Cheryl thought, the wolf was wrong. I can take things from here. "Anything he wants," he said. "That dog saved our baby's life, saved him from the wolf." And Cheryl went under the table, gave it to the wolf, and the wolf said, "Thanks very much." And he ate the leg of lamb. And Cheryl went out, then come back in again and said to the wolf, "You okay?" He said, "Yeah, but I'm still hungry." I said, "Okay." And he went and he got a pork roast and he took it down under the table and gave it to the wolf. And the wolf ate it. Oh, that was delicious. But he said to Cheryl, "I'm still hungry." "Oh, goodness, you're really hungry, yeah." Cheryl went up and he took some salt beef. And he took the salt beef underneath the table. And the wolf ate it. Oh, that was delicious, he said, "but it's made me a bit thirsty. Can you get me something to drink?" "Okay," said Cheryl. Some customer, this tall order guy, went up, got a jug of beer and took it down to the wolf. And the wolf drank it. He gulped it down. And he said to Cheryl, "Oh, that was lovely. It was nice beer, but I'm still thirsty." Cheryl went up, got another jug of beer, took it down. The wolf drank it. And then the wolf, because he had a few beers in him and he was starting to feel a bit merry, and because he had some beers in it, as sometimes happen, you think, "Well, I want something a wee bit stronger. Cheryl, can you get me something stronger than beer?" So Cheryl got up a bottle of vodka, took it down, gave it to the wolf. The wolf drank it down. And as sometimes happens when you've had a few drinks, you feel like a song coming on. And the wolf said to Cheryl, "Yeah, let's sing a little song." And Cheryl said, No, you've got to be quiet. If the farmer or the guests see you, they'll shoot you." "Never mind them. I can handle them. Yeah, let's have a song." And he started to sing. And you know, as wolves may sing, "Hang my on, bonny bones, and yon. Everyone stopped. Where's the noise coming from? Under the table. They lifted the tablecloth. The wolf ran out. Shiro ran out after him. The wolf ran out the open door into the forest. Well, more staggered sort of out into the forest with Shiro fast behind. They ran to the forest. Shiro come back, walked into the farmhouse door. And the farmer looked at Shiro and said, Shiro, you saved our baby's life once. But now you've done it twice. We didn't know that wolf was in there. Good dog, you saved our baby. And the party started again. And once again, Shiro was a guest of honor. And for the rest of his life, he lived a very, very happy existence.
Oh, thank you, Donald. That was a lovely story. And
Thank
just
you.
as a by the by, will you stop putting stuff in the chat, you lot, that make me laugh so much?
I bet that's Baba C.
Yeah, and Despina.
Oh, right. Yeah. Baba
Yeah,
C.
go and
Always a guilty culprit.
yeah, go and have a look in the on the chat if you get a chance, Donald. And to be able to tell jokes in a second language like that, with sort of wolfing down things and everything else, your English is very, very good, Despina. It gets. I say this every time, but it gets better every time.
I thought you were going to say my English was very good because.
Well, for a Scotsman, it's not bad.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a lovely story, Donald. Thank you very much. Right. So how good's your English then, Diana?
Aye, yeah, that was great, Donald. Thank you very much. It's
Yeah,
the way you tell them. It's definitely the way you tell them.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, well, talking about deep dark woods, I've got a story that's got a deep dark wood in it. And it's set quite a long time ago in the Highlands. And there's a young lassie there called Jeannie. And she's about 10 years old and she stays with her granny and her granddad. Of course, normally she would stay with her mum and dad, but her dad has been imprisoned by the local laird, who's just a bit overly greedy and always wants to cream off as much profit as he can for himself, rather than look after the villagers. It was a hard fight just to have a crust of loaf at those times. It was very hard. Well, her father got imprisoned for apparently stealing a sheep. But everybody knew that he never ever stole the sheep. It was just the laird had to try and get some trick in order to get him imprisoned, because if he was imprisoned, then he couldn't do any harm. All the strong-minded, clever people, the laird would try in one way or another to get put out of the way so they wouldn't rise up against him or have a following of their own. And her mum had to work in the kitchens to make food for all the prisoners. So although she loved her granny and granddad, it would have been better for her if she could stay with her mum and her dad, but she wasn't even allowed to visit them. Now, at that time, it was tough for the adults, and it was also very tough for the children. And if you were 10 years old, you had to work. You did get time to play, but nothing like the amount of time that kids get nowadays to play. No, she would have to collect truffles. That was part of her job. Now, they weren't easy to find, but it just so happened that the laird loved them. He liked all kinds of meat. He liked beef, he liked pork, he liked chicken, anything at all, but he also liked lovely things to go along with them. And if he had truffles, he found the combination of flavors was just wonderful. But these truffles weren't easy to find. And this was Jeannie's job. She had to go out and try and find as many as she could. And she would go with her basket. And she would look for, they were not easy. She did, she found one or two, and it was a long, slow process. And she would go back to her granny, and she in turn would pass them on to the head man, and then to the clerk, and of course, back to the laird. Well, this particular day, Jeannie went out. And quite often, like a lot of lassies in the Highlands in Scotland, me included, you have a bit of a song in your heart when you go out into the countryside, because it's beautiful countryside. And this was the case that day. But it wasn't until she saw this beautiful white horse coming towards her. It was just on the edge of the forest. It was just a small pony, really. And it was pure white. It took her breath away. And it seemed very tame. It came up close to her. And she even dared to stroke it and stroke the tail as well. And she marveled and she stayed quite a while with it. And then she sang her song. I walk through the forest and you follow, follow, follow. I walk through the forest and you follow. Pure and white, eye so bright. I walk through the forest and you follow. So she stayed with this pony for a bit longer. And it nestled up close to her. And she just enjoyed that so much. But then she remembered she had better be back. And she better have some truffles. And she looked at her basket and there were none in it. But just before this pony went away, it started pawing at the ground. And when she went closer, she could see a truffle. And then another and another. And she managed to half fill her basket. And this was unusual. And she went back to her granny, and her granny had to pass them on to the headman and then the laird. But some of the villagers had seen this little white pony and they were a bit curious. And then when they realized about all the truffles that she had got, well, they started putting 2 and 2 together, making 76, and they thought that they could equally get truffles. Maybe they would be able to charm their way to the laird's, because he loved truffles. But no. Well, I mean, was this beautiful white horse going to slowly come out from the edge of the forest with all these villagers there making quite a racket? No. So one by one, they had to go back to their job. And there was only Jeannie left. And there she was. And the beast did come out. The beast came over again and she started to sing, I walk through the forest and you follow, follow, follow. I walk through the forest and you follow. Pure and white, eye so bright. I walk through the forest and you follow. And she stroked it again and she loved this time with this horse. And she wondered where it had come from. Maybe some rich master and had managed to escape. She didn't know. But this time, after the horse left, it pawed the ground. She found a whole load of truffles and her basket was brimming over this time. And when she took it back, well, there was quite a furore. Word travels fast when something like that happens. And the headman started to ask questions, and so did the clerk. And the clerk was directly responsible to the laird, and he had to find an explanation why suddenly there were all these truffles. And he'd heard about the pony, but he didn't really understand. And so he decided his plan was to find a man that knew about horses, a man that was a hunter, that could be very quiet and creep up on his prey, to hide behind bushes whenever next he saw Jeannie going out into the forest or just next to the forest. And so that's what happened. He crouched down low, and as she came, in a little while, came the pony. I walk through the forest, and so on. And she started to stroke it. And the hunter was there, but he couldn't be seen. And he marveled at this beast, and he had to remember every single detail, because if he didn't, the clerk would not be pleased and he might not get paid. So he studied the beast. And he wondered at why it was so affectionate with this young girl. And he didn't really understand, but he noted everything, just in case he forgot something. And the next day he went back to the clerk and he said, oh, it's a wonderful beast, this white pony. It's so affectionate with the young girl. But there's just one thing. It doesn't have any markings of black or brown on it. But there's just one thing about it. It has this nub of bone in the middle of its forehead. Makes it look quite ugly. And as soon as he heard that, the clerk knew The clerk knew this was not a horse. This was a unicorn, a very special beast. Well, they'd always talked about this enchanted forest, about maybe griffins being there, maybe bears, maybe dragons, all kinds of wonderful animals, but nobody ever really expected there to be one. But now this was undoubtedly a young unicorn. And then the clerk was puzzled. What was he going to do? He was responsible first and foremost to the laird. But the laird wasn't someone that you really wanted to be responsible to. He wasn't a kindly man or somebody that inspired you, quite the reverse. And it wasn't in the clerk's nature to give over a beautiful animal like that, because what would the laird do? He would hunt this animal down. And then, like all the other animals that he'd hunted down, would be displayed on the walls of his castle, like a fox head or a wolf head or a bear skin. And the clerk was uneasy about that. But on the other hand, he also had a family to look after. And if he didn't tell the laird and someone else got in there before him, what was that going to mean for him? And was he going to lose his job and lose the trust of the laird? And after much toing and froing in his head, he rode out to the laird's castle. And when the laird came down, he told him, but he didn't listen to the whole story. The laird just did not listen. He wasn't used to it. He was used to issuing commands and not listening to what people said in return. And so he rode out with a couple of his men and he just dashed through the forest, making a terrible racket. And of course he couldn't find anything. Well, the clerk reminded him, you only listen to half the story. Don't let you get into that habit. Whatever you do, only listen to the whole story. I know it works out better in the long run. Anyway, he only listened to half the story and he forgot the bit all about the maiden. So they would go and get Jeannie. But Jeannie didn't want to go. Her parents were imprisoned. And why should she help? And she loved this animal. But then she was told if she didn't help, there would be penalties for her mum and her dad. And so she was taken to the scene by the forest. And she was crying, but she forced herself to be as brave as she possibly could. And she wanted the animal to come, but she didn't. And she was so worried about what might happen to it, to them both. And this was a terrible laird. There was no telling what he might do. But what he did was, this laird, was he got a brush fence made with the help of the villagers so that he and two others could be on horseback and be hidden behind this brush fence. And then Jeannie would be there. And eventually out came this beautiful beast. And it went over to her, but she didn't sing. She didn't sing. She just stroked it. And all the time she's thinking, how am I going to get out of this terrible situation? And she stroked it and she went alongside it. And at the last minute, she just flung herself up on top and her head was right down, her arms round the top of the unicorn's head, and off they went really fast into the forest. And of course they were followed by the laird and his two men. And all you could hear for a while were the patter of hooves getting faster and faster and faster. And then it seemed to dwindle, and then you could hear the hooves again. And eventually it petered away and there was silence. And everybody was surprised. Well, eventually the two men came back, the two assistants of the laird, and also so did Jeannie. But Jeannie wasn't going to tell them anything she didn't have to. She learned how they can mistrust. But the two men explained that the laird was dead. He'd been gored by something sharp, something long. But that night, well, she went to her bed, did Jeannie, and she was thinking about everything that had happened. And now there was going to be a new laird. And would it be a good laird? Would it be somebody that was equally horrible? Or would it be somebody with a different way of doing things? Well, in the end, it was someone that was different, somebody that had lived under this terrible ogre of a laird, that knew what it was like to suffer. And he didn't want the people of the village to suffer in the same way again, not if he could help it. So, in time, when he was appointed, her mum and her dad got released. And when they came home, she was overjoyed. And that night she went to her bed and they tucked her in and she said to them, unicorns have parents too.
Oh, lovely, Diana. Lovely. Thank you very much. That's just the right time of year for that story as well. So I hope you're telling it somewhere out, but not, it's lovely for us to listen to it, but I hope you're telling it to some kids in a forest somewhere between now and Halloween. So,
not in a forest, but at a school.
Yeah, absolutely, at school will do fine. So we're going to go to Despina, and after Despina, we're going to Lincolnshire, which is Keith. Okay, so Despina.
All right. Well, I'm putting on a little show beginnings of November, and it will have to do with stories of love and the other world, as lots of dates come together around that time. It's a bit of Samhain, a bit of Dia de los Muertos, the Mexican thing, and of course it's All Saints Day, the Christian version of it. So it's like a universal thing happening simultaneously, and it combines not only our world and supposedly the next one, but also our past with our present. So I have found a few Samhain stories which are really to the point, but they tend to be rather, well, they do not always have a happy end, or it's a bittersweet end. So in order for me to leave my audience in hope, I was thinking of finishing my performance with a story I'm going to tell to you tonight, and please share your thoughts with me on that afterwards. So, a long time ago, so long ago nobody really knows whether it happened or not, in the faraway kingdom of India, there lived a happy royal couple. The queen and the king, they were perfect together, they had a good life and they were good sovereigns. But the thing was that they could not have a baby. They tried and tried for a really long time, and the years passed and they were getting worried that they would be left heirless. But it just so happened that one day, well, their prayers got answered and the queen brought up a baby girl in the world, and everybody was happy, and she was the apple of their eye. Now, this girl, she turned out to be not only beautiful, but also quite clever. A wise one, they'd say. Now, when the girl came of age, she was, of course, expected to be married. So they were expecting suitors from all over the place. But the thing is that there were none. Nobody appeared. Nobody came to ask for the princess's hand. Well, they were so taken aback, they really didn't know what to do. So one day the king just got his daughter and told her that, well, dear, since nobody has come to claim your hand, perhaps it's up to you. Perhaps you should go out to the world and look for your man on your own. So the princess did exactly that. She rode on her horse and started galloping away. She passed the mountains, and she passed the rivers, and she passed the valleys, and then sometime later, almost at the border of their realm, she just saw this guy. and he was so handsome. Not only was he handsome, but he was helping an old man at his side, and the old man appeared to be blind. So she asked around, and she found out that that was a prince, and that blind man at his side was his father. They had lost a war, and they had been evicted, exiled from their kingdom, and they were just making ends meet on their own there with the few soldiers they had left. And the thing is that when she saw him again, and he caught sight of her eyes, he smiled at her, and that was it. Now the princess knew. They met each other and they started talking, and they really liked each other, and this was a very proud man. He would not leave his father under no circumstances. He would not be admitted as a foreign husband to another king's palace. So he told her that, I like you very much. I believe we can be a nice couple, but if you want us to be together, you should leave everything behind and come and live with me here. Now, the girl, well, she knew that that would be the love of her life. So she went back on her horse, galloped back to the palace, told her parents that she had found the man she was going to marry. When she named the man, when she uttered his name, the wisest counsel of the king just stood up and yelled, "No, not that one!" The king was taken aback. "Why not?" he asked. "Anybody but that one, that man," said the wise one. "That man is destined to live a very short life. She should marry anybody else but that one." "Well, my dear," said the father, "you heard the wise man. What do you think?" "Father," the girl said, "I don't care. I don't care if it's going to be a year or a month or a week or a moment at his side. I know that this is the man I want to marry. It can only be him and no one else." So the father consented, of course, and he sent his daughter away to find her beloved. And they got married. And they were living a nice, humble life, quite humble for a princess. She must have loved him dearly, because he would go out into the forest, which at that time was not deep and dark. It was still quite, there was light. When the couple went in there, he would take his axe and chop wood, and she would take her rope and put it all together, wrap it around, so they would sell it to the market and make a living that way. One day, when they were exactly doing that, he was walking in front of her, and she was following. When he lifted his axe to hit the bark of the tree, the axe dropped from his hands, and he too dropped at her feet. Now the girl, she saw her man lying there, not breathing. She shook him and she tried to make him come to, but he wouldn't. And then the forest grew deep and dark, because from the path came this shadow of a man, hooded. You could not see a face, only two charcoal eyes burning underneath the hood. And this form that was not walking but hovering over the ground came towards them and stretched out a bony hand towards the man's mouth, and out of it there came a little flame which he held. He turned his back and started walking away. Now the princess, she had heard the omen. She knew what was going on. She quickly took the body of her beloved. She dragged it to a nearby cave, and she covered it all in sage and magical herbs, because inside the cave it was cold and the body would be reserved, and quickly made off to follow the hooded figure. Now, instead of following her husband, she was following Death. Death was walking in front of her, and she was at his feet. They came to this valley, and there was mist all around. It was grey and colorless, and the mist grew. It grew to ankle deep and then knee high, and then it started swallowing them up. She couldn't even tell which side was front and which was back. She just saw the flame in the bony hand in front of her, and that hand, that flame, that light she followed. They walked and walked, and they reached the end of the valley. And then, it seemed that only then, Death realized that she was there, realized that she was present, and he turned to her and he said, "Princess, you should follow me no further. I am about to enter my realm now, and this is no place for the living. Turn around and walk away." "No, my lord," she said humbly. "Pardon me, but this is my husband you're holding in your hand, and where my husband goes, I follow." "Princess, you're very courageous," said Death. "I think your courage should be rewarded. You can ask for a favor, and I will make it happen. Ask for anything except you have no right to ask me to bring your husband back to the world of the living. Ask anything but that." So the girl thought. She thought and thought, and her mind, it just, on its own accord, it just went back to her father-in-law, the poor old man who had lost his eyesight, and how he would now be lonely, and how he would be all alone, and how he had always been kind to her and treated her as if she were his own child. And then she lifted up her eyes and said, "Oh, my Lord Almighty, you who govern all, let my father-in-law's eyesight be restored." And Death said, "It will be as you asked." Back in the world of the living, where time, anybody who has told a story, anybody who has heard the story knows that time passes very differently between the two worlds. Back in the world of the living, the old man woke up. He was so sad he had lost his son. He had no idea where his daughter-in-law was. He was all alone, but he opened up his eyes and faced the sunlight for the first time after such a long time he could not remember. And with that, he found his strength. He regained his courage and gathered his men around him, and they went back and claimed his throne, and he was victorious this time. He got his kingdom back, and again he reigned as king. The father-in-law was very happy, even though he had no idea what had happened to his son. Back in the world of the dead, one moment had passed because Death turned around and started walking up a steep mountain, a rocky slide with no path could be seen. It was just rocks and rocks. And even though that figure was hovering over it upwards, the princess, she had to climb with her hands and her feet, and soon her shoes were all torn. And until she reached the mountain top, breathless, her feet were bleeding and she was out of breath. And then, at the top of the mountain, Death turned around and told her, "This is as far as you get, princess. I admire your courage, but you can no longer follow me here. Pardon me, Lord, she said, but you still have my husband in your hand, and where my husband goes, I follow. Princess, said Death, your courage is unbelievable. I think you should be rewarded. Ask for anything you want, and I will make it happen, except bring your husband back to life. Now the princess thought, and she remembered her parents. They would be inconsolable. She was their only child. They had never managed to have an heir. So she said, "O my Lord Almighty, you who govern all, ruler of welfare, kindly let my parents have another heir." And the Death said, "It will be as you asked." And then he turned around. Back in the world of the living, the queen, the elderly queen, found out she was with child. They had no idea what had happened to their daughter, and they had been looking for her for some time now. But soon she came to have another child, and this time it was a boy, and that would be the heir to the throne. They couldn't be happier, even though they were still always looking for their daughter. In the world of the dead, one moment had passed when the Death had turned his back to the princess and had started climbing down the mountain, and she was following up suit, of course. She would never stop until they reached this enormous gate. It was so big, so high, you couldn't tell where the end was. It was just, you lost sight in the heavens. And in front of this great door, they stopped again and turned around and said, "Princess, this is as far as you go, because here starts the realm of the dead, and you have no place whatsoever there. I admire your courage. I know you are following your husband. You can ask for a last favor, and I will make it happen. Ask for anything, but do not ask for me to bring your husband back to life." Now the girl, by this time, she was clever, I told you, remember? She had been making rounds in her mind of what she'd ask had she been given another favor. And now was her chance, for she said, "Oh my Lord Almighty, you who rule the land, all I really long for is children from my husband." And then Death was speechless for a moment, and he said, "Princess, not only is your courage unprecedented, your intelligence is the same. For I have given my word and I cannot take it back now, and even though I did warn you that I could not restore your husband to life, I am obliged to fulfill your wish. So now this flame belongs to you. Take it and leave." She held the flame in her hands and it was burning her. She had to change hand to hand while she was rushing up the mountain and rushing down and into the valley of the fog and back to the deep dark forest. And she could not care less about the rocks that were tearing her feet up away, and the mist that was covering her up, swallowing her up, and how deep and dark the forest was, because soon it seemed like one moment to her she was back in the cave where her husband's body lay, and there she kneeled and let the flame of her hand into her husband's mouth, and his eyes opened. And he was unaware, of course, of what had happened. He just saw his wife and hugged her, and she would cry and laugh at the same time as she was telling him the whole story. So they found their way back to his father's palace. They were admitted there because he was the son and heir, and they had many children together. And after a long, long time, when death decided to visit them again, this time holding hands, they both followed. Ευχαριστώ. Thank you.
It's a lovely story, Despina, and it was well told. And yes, absolutely, you put that into your collection. It's an old story. It goes back. There's lots of different versions of it.
Yeah.
But you've told it extremely well in a second or third language. And yes, I would say put it in to your collection.
Thank you.
Absolutely, I would. I think everybody else would agree. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Right, so we're going to go for a bit of old Lincolnshire.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
Way back in old Japan, there lived an old man, Takitari. He was a bamboo cutter. And he lived in a cottage, little tiny cottage with his good wife. And he was getting older, we were both getting older. And they were very sad because they had no children. Nobody to look after them in their old age. And one morning he went and climbed up the hill just beside the bamboo, and he sat down and weary and he's tired, thinking, oh, I'm getting too old for this and I have nobody to look after us. And then in the depths of the bamboo clump, there was a bright green light. And he made his way through the bamboo and he saw this beautiful bamboo growing. And he took his axe and he cut it. And at the base of the bamboo, there was a green jewel about as big as 2 fists. And he opened it up, and there, out from that crystal, that jewel, came a young lady, a tiny, tiny, beautiful girl. Ah, you must be a fairy. And she replied, yes, I am a fairy. And I have come to live with you and your good wife for a while. And he said to her, well, we've only a very small, poor cottage. There's not enough room really for somebody else. And she said, well, where is that green jewel? Look into it. And he looked into it, and there was some gold coins. Ah, and so he took this beautiful girl, this beautiful fairy, back to his cottage. Wifey, 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 he said, look what I've found. And he showed her this crystal, this jewel with all the gold in it. And I have somebody here with me. And he brought the fairy, the young girl, to his wife. She's going to come and live with us and stay with us. She is going to be our foster daughter for a while. And as time went on, he had all this money, this gold coins, and so he built himself a big house, a big mansion, lots of garden around it, and lots of servants to look after them. And the 3 of them, they were very happy together. And the young girl, she grew into a beautiful, beautiful lady. And he called her Lady Beaming Bright. Now, word got around that there's this beautiful, beautiful girl there living with the bamboo cutter. And so many young men came to woo her and try to persuade her to win her heart and to marry her. But she wouldn't have anything to do with any of those suitors. I live with my foster father and foster mother, we're happy here. But then one day, the Mikado, the emperor, came. And he tried to woo the young girl. Come, he said, come and be my queen. And we can live together and rule the kingdom. But she was very sad, and there's a tear in her that rolled down her cheek and said, no, sire, I cannot do that. And instead of going out and about, this was after about 2.5 years, instead of going out and about, she stayed in the garden. She looked very, very sad during the day. And at night, she cried and she was very sad. And as the moon came out, it grew bigger and bigger until it was a full moon. And Takitori saw the moon and said, oh, what a bright and beautiful moon there is tonight. And his good wife said, yes, it's like a brass saucepan that's been recently polished. It's beautiful. But the emperor, he looked at the moon and said, that looks like a pale and sad suitor, somebody that is not able to be very happy. And then Takitori, the bamboo cutter, he looked up and said, ah, there's a great highway that comes down from the moon into our garden. And as he looked, there was all these figures, these servants with bright lights coming down the highway from the moon. And Lady beaming bright, she said, yes, that is my home in the moon, because I am from the moon, and the king of the moon is my father. 3 years ago, I disobeyed him, and he sent me into exile down here onto earth. But that time of exile is coming to an end. I've been very, very, very happy with my foster father and foster mother. And I leave with you that green jewel, that crystal for you for the future. And out of the moon, down the highway came one of the leaders, one of the servants with a big cloak of feathers, and put it round the lady beaming bright. And then she took a small bottle and gave it to the emperor and said, this is the elixir of life. Drink this and you'll live forever. You'll be immortal. Then with her cloak of feathers, she flew up into the moon, up the great highway, back to the moon, and back to her home with her father. Now the bamboo cutter, Takitori, and his old wife, they were happy for the rest of their lives, having this experience of having a foster daughter for a while. And they were well looked after with all the money they had. But the emperor, the Mikado, he took this bottle, this elixir of life, and he went up a high mountain and he built a great fire. And he threw the bottle of elixir of life into the fire to be burned up. And he said, how can I live forever if I drank this without my lady beaming bright? And the vapor, the blue vapor that came up from the fire went up into the heavens. And he was hoping that that blue vapor would carry that message that he could not live without his lady beaming bright.
Oh, thank you, Keith. That was lovely. That was really, really lovely. Thank you very much. Yeah, absolutely. And if I found the fountain of youth, I wouldn't drink a drop, and that's the truth. It's a song that we sing sometimes here in Shropshire. It's a country and western song, I think, but we sing it song sometimes. I wouldn't want to go back. I wouldn't want to go back. I really wouldn't. And I certainly wouldn't want to live for the whole of eternity, because the breweries wouldn't have enough beer for me to drink. Right. So we're going to go to Rona, and then Baba, you're after Rona, and then we've got Janet, who came in a little bit late. Janet, I know it was only seconds, but you got to the end of the list. I'm afraid that's all it is. That's okay. And hopefully we'll get around everything. Right. So we've been to Scotland a couple of times, but now I think it's Manchester with a Scottish accent. Is that right? But I am intrigued, Rona, what is sitting behind you? Are you in a gypsy caravan?
No, I'm actually in my house in Italy. That's
Oh,
the
you never are. Oh. Oh, right, okay, I didn't realise that. It just looked like a little stove in a little car. Lots of times I've sat in caravans like that. Okay, thank you for coming on in. Anyway, so is that Italian wine you're drinking?
No, it's called Spuma. It's Donald will get this one, and certainly I'm sure Diana will as well. It's Italy's version of Iron Brew. It's non-alcoholic. Cheers.
Oh, some of these myths get dispersed in an instant sometimes. I'll leave you to it.
Right. Just talking about forests, I'm right in the middle of one now. So I'd like to tell you a story about another forest, the Forest of Foden, which is way, way up north of Scotland. And it's not like any other forest, because for a start, it's enchanted. And the characters, people and some other animals even, have become immortal over time. And the two characters that I'm going to tell you about, Mirren and Brodie, quite spectacular. He's spectacular because he's devilishly handsome, very clever. You know, the two tend to go hand in hand occasionally. And he's dressed like, well, every female that sees him, her heart flutters. Tight leather jacket pulled in tight at the waist, velvet leggings and long boots up to his thighs. Dark eyes and eyelashes that are about an inch long, and he flutters those eyelashes, and he's vain. And he has, being immortal is not enough. He has special powers. They can only have one special power, and the one that he chose was that he could be any creature he wanted, and he chose birds, because there's a variety of birds. And he, more often than not, was the eagle, the bird of prey, which suited his nature down to a T. He was quite a character, our Brodie. Mirren, on the other hand, she was just perfection in every way. Sweet, innocent, kind, unselfish, and absolutely beautiful. She wore a green velvet dress that went all the way down to her ankles. Up to here, down to her ankles. But that didn't hide her figure, because it was moulded around her. And she had a gold feather belt tied around her waist. Could have been the feathers of an eagle. I don't know. But anyway, every time she saw him, her heart would flutter. Sometimes it would even miss a beat. And she would think, if he was not so evil, I could love that man. And when he saw her, he would think, if she was not so stupid, I could love that girl. He saw everything that was nice and kind about her as stupidity. And this had been going on for a very long time. And it was a case of will they, won't they? If it was up to either of them, they probably would. But quite often, fate gets in the way of these things. And yet again, he has done something to disturb Mirren beyond belief. She's walking through the forest. She's going to the little school at the edge of the village where she's going to tell stories to the children. And then she hears him. "You've failed me, you miserable wretches. I gave you one little job to do and you failed." And the crows and the magpies and all the other birds of that size, of that ilk, are on the branches with their heads low. "We are sorry, Master. We will try again." "No, you won't try again. You will succeed." "Yes, Master." The job he had given them was to rid the forest of the little wrens, those tiny little birds that are so beautiful. But they irritated him. The noise that they made, it tweeter, tweeter, tweeter. He didn't like it, so he wanted them gone. Mirren could not believe her ears. Really? He has surpassed himself this time. I don't know what I can do about this. And she had stopped dead in her tracks when she heard him. So he didn't see her. She hadn't yet stepped into the clearing. But when she did, he spotted her right away. "Ah, Mirren, have you been listening to me?" She's not even capable of telling a lie, so she can't say no. She just says, "I've got no time to talk to you. I'm in a hurry. The children are waiting for me." And she hurried on through the clearing to the other side. But Mirren, well, it was written all over her face how she felt about what he had just said. So he knew that she had hurt him, and he knew that she would interfere. So he sent those crows and magpies and ravens, sent them off to do the dirty work that he had set them. And she was beside herself. What am I going to do? How am I going to save these little birds? Well, she didn't have any special powers as such. At least we didn't think she had. But she did have some very powerful friends. She had the Lord of the Skies, formed in a huge cloud, but he always had a smiling face, especially for Mirren. And she called on him, and seconds later he was there beside her. "How can I help you, my dear?" And she told him, and he was furious. He said, "He's just surpassed himself this time. Somebody has to stop that man." "Not now," she said. "We need to go and save those little birds." So she stepped on to her friend and he whisked her across the forest. And they got just before they got to where those little birds gathered and nested. She said, "We're going to need some more help. I don't know how we got over this." And she called on her other friend, the king of the forest. Now, you know him, he's a huge tree man. He's been in lots of stories. He's tall and he's strong, and he's got long arms and long twiggy fingers. "How can I help you, my dear?" And she told him. Well, he was absolutely furious. "Somebody has to stop this man." "Yes, we've decided, but not now. First of all, we must save the little wrens." And they moved on. And just as they got to the stage where those little wrens were all gathered, one huge crow flew over Mirren's head, and he had a little wren in his mouth, and he squawked when he saw her, and it fell to the ground with a sickening thud. And Mirren thought, "Oh no." She picked it up, and it was still, but she prized open his little beak, and and the next minute there was a little flutter, and his heart was beating again. And he opened his eyes, and she said, "Go now, gather all your friends as quickly as you can. You must now get them all here." And he did. He flew around and warned all his family of the danger, and they all came and went into those bushes where they generally nested. Problem was, that didn't save them. because the crows and the ravens and magpies could get into those bushes, no problem. And Mirren said to the Lord of the Forest, I need you to help me. I want you to make those bushes impenetrable, only for the little wrens to be able to go in and out. I can do that, my dear, he said. And he took his huge twiggy arms and fingers and he pulled them back and forward across those bushes. And as he did so, huge thorns appeared, spiny thorns. He says, that'll keep them out. And she said, well, being as good as she was, she couldn't bear the thought of them not being warned beforehand. Please put some red berries so that they know of the danger. Oh, Mirren, you are just too kind. Why would you want to help these gruesome, horrible birds? Oh, please, she said. So he did. He put a red berry at strategic points on each of those leaves. Each leaf had 7 spikes. That worked perfectly. Those little wrens were safe. Whenever they saw one of those huge birds coming after them, they would just dart into those bushes and they were safe. Mirren decided to call it the Holy Bush because she felt as if it was a bit of a miracle. And it was. But over time, people got the spelling wrong. Somebody spelt it with 2 L's and it became the Holly Bush. And that's the Holly Bush that you know and recognize well. Well, now you know where it came from.
Rona, that was lovely. Thank you very much. That's absolutely great.
Yes.
Right, so we're going to go to Baba, and then from Baba, we're going to go to Janet. Unless Waleed, are you doing a story tonight, Waleed, or not?
No, maybe next
No?
one.
Okay,
Next-
well, next
Right.
time or the one after, I will be sat alongside you. So you will
Okay.
have to do one that day, okay? So now we go to Washington, D.C., to the land of Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
Oh,
You think you've got trouble with your politics over in your country? You want to have a look what's happening over here, mate?
At least you guys still have a democracy.
Oh,
We
you
got
wanna bet?
idiots. You're better off than we are, but hey, we got idiots voting to get rid of the Constitution.
Well,
Oy, that's stupid. Excuse me. I'm in a good
we've
mood.
just got we've just got
Woosah.
we've just got idiots voting idiots for
Hey,
idiots.
you know, but I gotta tell Rona, that was a heart-wrenching story. But I'm not complaining. I'm a
I've
little-
seen your
I'm a little-
message. I've seen your message, Babasi. Heart wrenching, WREN. Thank you.
No, thank you, but I'm kind of bushed after that. Okay, moving on. So I have 2 quick stories. Well, one medium and one real quick. Because you see, it's a Nancy. No, it's a Nancy. No, it's Nancy. No, it's Aunt Nancy. A Nancy is a Nancy, and a Nancy is Nancy, and Nancy is Aunt Nancy. Oh, for a spider god, he has so many names. But one thing is sure, he's
you have
always
enough
up to
check?
something, and he's very, very cunning.
Hmm.
And Rona needs to mute.
Are we having soup or?
It's all right, Rona, things happen. I am not upset. So this is an Anansi's tale. You see, long ago, before the beautiful women in this assembly were born, before Keith Butter's name was Butter, long before Donald was related to the people that measure television shows. I don't know if you get that one, but okay. Long, long, long before Mike reduced his last name to Ara, and John Rowe had a brother named Michael in a boat, is when this story takes place. I know, I couldn't help myself. I tried. And Diana, well, her peers are among us. Did I get everybody? No, I left out Rona. But you know what, Rona, after that heart-wrenching story, I'm gonna let it rest.
What about Janet?
Did I leave out Janet? Oh, I was gonna do a Kung Fu movie. It could be Roaming Rona and Crouching Janet. See, blame that on Mike. Blame that on Mike. And Rona can open up a barber shop. Okay, I think I covered everybody. All right. And Waleed, I'd like to see your wallet. See, Waleed, wallet. Okay. On with the story. Long ago, before there was television, radio, before there were phones of any sort, before there was cable, is when this story took place. In a time before automobiles and even maybe horse-drawn carriages. One day, Anansi and Turtle were sitting together talking. And you know Anansi, he was doing most of the talking. And they were watching the pigeons flying all over the place. And the turtle turned to Anansi and said, you know, I would really like to fly. And Anansi said, I'd like to fly too. And the pigeons were just flying around, but one pigeon heard them. And so one day, a whole flock of pigeons came down to where Anansi and the turtle were talking and eating, because that's Anansi's favorite thing, is to eat, and to eat some more. And the turtle said, oh, pigeons, 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 please teach me to fly. It's something I want to do more than anything else. Teach me to fly and I shall be happy. Anansi said, well, if you're going to teach him to fly, you're going to teach me to fly. I want to fly. I want to fly. And not that kind. So the pigeons, they looked back and forth at each other and they said, okay. Wait, we'll teach you to fly. We'll teach you to fly. But we're going to teach the turtle first. We're going to teach the turtle first. And so they took feathers from their wings and other parts, and they stuck the feathers all over the turtle. They said some words, and the turtle began to fly. And as he began to fly, he followed the direction of the birds, of the pigeons. And they flew and they flew and they flew because they're pigeons. Of course they can fly. They wouldn't walk. And they flew until they came to the tiger's garden. Now you see, because of John Rowe, I'm confused. Yes, I'm blaming it on you, John Rowe. You see, I originally thought the story was a West Indies story, but John Rowe informed me that at one time the French had no word, did not have a separate word for tiger and lion. And I'd be lying to say, I'm not sure which one this is. But we're gonna go with tiger because it'll tie into my bad pun coming up. So they landed in the tiger's garden and they began to pick up and peck the seeds. And they told Turtle, come on, get the seeds, put it in the sack, put it in the sack, put it in the sack, put it in the sack. And so Turtle began to pick up seeds and put it in the sack, put it in the sack, put it in the sack, put it in the sack. And they were doing this, but the keeper of the garden stepped forth and said, whoa, what are you doing? Stop right now. And the pigeons looked up. I said, stop right now. Put those seeds down. And the pigeons, because they knew the guardian could be very violent, they snatched all the feathers off of the turtle and they took to the sky. They left the turtle on the ground next to the sack with all the seeds. This is not how you succeed in life. And the guardian of the protector of the garden said, it's you. You're the one that stole all the seeds. I got you now. I got you now, and I'm gonna take you. I'm gonna take. Notice my accent just keeps switching all over the place. I'm gonna take you to the tiger now. And that he did. He grabbed the turtle by the scruff of his shell, and he grabbed the bag of seeds, and he went, and they got into the kitchen, and the tiger was there and said, "What have we here? I caught this turtle stealing the seeds of your corn." "Oh, really? Then I think we shall have turtle soup this evening." No. You see, I wasn't stealing the seeds. You see, I was flying with the pigeon, flying with the pigeons. You would have me believe that turtle can fly. You were flying with the, it's off. No, really, I was flying with the pigeons, and they heard the protector of your garden coming, and they took all the feathers back that they loaned me to help me fly, and they just left me holding the bag. I wasn't still. I won't hear another word. We'll have turtle soup this evening. Cook, prepare him. I shall be back. Oh man, where I'm going. I tell you what, Cook, before you do that, let me sing a song. And the turtle began to sing a song that was as beautiful as the ladies assembled here today. It was so beautiful, Cook just stood and looked. And Turtle said, "If you put me down on the floor, I can sing even better." And the turtle began to sing even more. He sang so well that all the cook could do was dance. I'm not going to dance, and dance and dance. And the turtle said, "You know, if you take me out to the river and let me stick my tail in the river, I can sing even better." And so the cook stopped dancing, grabbed the turtle, made his way down. Yeah, it was a he. Made his way down, put the tail of the turtle in the water, and the turtle began to sing so well that Diana, Despina, Janet, and Rona all began to do backup, like just they're doing the backup. I mean, they were just doing it. They were just doing it and doing it and doing it well. And they were singing, "Yes, that's it, Janet. And that's it, Despina. Yes. All right, Rona. All right. And Janet, and yes, and Diane. Yes, they were just singing. They were backup like the Pips were to oh my goodness, I just forgot her name. That's terrible. And she's one of my favorite artists. Anyhow, Gladys Knight.
Ghost night.
Yes. Oh, they were having a good time. And she's just dancing. He's just dancing and dancing and dancing. He was a dancing machine. And suddenly he realized he didn't hear the turtle singing. The cook stopped dancing, looked down the river, and on the river bottom was a turtle waving bye-bye. And the turtle made his way down river. Now Cook knew that he was in a whole lot of trouble because he let Tiger's dinner get away. So Cook looked at the house, he looked at the turtle, and he looked at the gate leading away from the garden, and as fast as you can spell fast, he was gone. You see, Tiger had a hard time keeping help, especially cooks. A lot of the help disappeared mysteriously and usually around mealtime. So the cook didn't want to stay around to find out what happened to his predecessors. Well, we don't know what Tiger ate that evening. We don't know where Cook made off to, but we do know this. Flocking with the wrong crowd can get you into a whole lot of trouble. And if you're not careful, you may wind up in a place where you don't want to be. And talking about not want to be prepared, know how to swim. Thank you. And my quickie, I just forgot the quickie. I got this little quickie. Oh. Because it's around Halloween. This is not quite a frightening story, but I need some help. If anyone knows where this story originated, I would appreciate it. This is a story that's been haunting me literally since I was in what we call junior high or middle school. So I was around 6th or 7th or 8th grade. So that would put me somewhere between 11 and 13, probably 12. So this is the way the story goes. And of course, this story takes place on a dark and stormy night. But it didn't start out that way. But Phil, what's his name, had a deadline to meet, and he made his way through the storm and the thunder and the lightning and the rain, the rain, the rain, the rain. Did I mention the rain? And he made his way downtown to his office. He parked in his private parking space, and he made his way to the 36th floor of the skyscraper that where his office was. And he's working, and he turned on the television. Yeah, see, this man was so high up, he had a television in his office. All right, not just a computer monitor, a television. And I think it was one of those curved flat screens. That's a contradiction. Anyhow, he had the news on, and he's listening to the news, and he's working because he's got to get this thing done. It's due by midnight. He's got to get it done, and it's thundering and it's lightning, and the only people in the building are what's his name and the guard downstairs. And he's working and he's working. He hears the elevator, and he looks at the clock because it's too soon for the guard to be making his rounds. And he's working, and this loud thunder, bam, bam, bam. That's not how thunder sounds, but you know, anyhow, it's thunder, and the windows were rattling, and the rain was hitting the windows so hard that he was afraid that maybe it would break the window itself. But then he remembered it was tempered, so he tempered his fear. And he's working, and he heard the outer door of his office open. Well, that's strange, because the guard wouldn't open and come into his office because the guard knew he was there. The guard might radio him, but that was about it. So he kept on working. He looks up. There's a flash. The lights go off. The lights come back on. When the lights come back on, standing in the threshold of his office is a man. A man who looked like he was having a bad day. A man that looked like, well, like I said, he was having a bad day. And in his hands, there was a Glock. That's a gun. And he looked at the man, and just then on the radio, it said, "We interrupt this program to bring you a special bulletin. An escapee from the mental institution is on the prowl. We're telling everyone, lock your doors. Do not answer your doors. Do not answer your doors, no matter what they say. They need to use the bathroom, say no. If someone's knocking at your door, call the police. It's better to be safe than sorry." We repeat, there's an escaped mental patient roaming the downtown area. And the man who was having a rough day looked at television, and he looked at what's his name, and he chambered the Glock. He said, they think I'm crazy. They think I'm crazy. They think I'm crazy, but could a crazy man escape from that top security transport? Could a crazy man get out of that so-called straitjacket? Could a crazy man take the Glock off of your night watchman downstairs? Could he? Click. Tell you what. Answer this question very carefully. You answer it correct, I'll let you live. Am I crazy? The thunder, the lightning, the lights blinked off. And my question to you was, is the man crazy? Would you tell a crazy man he was crazy? And if you told him he wasn't crazy, would he know you were lying? How do you think this tale ends? Asante.
Well, I can tell you how it finished once, Baba, because somebody got into Buckingham Palace, and they got into the bedroom of Her Majesty the Queen when she was still alive about 15 years ago, and he said basically the same as your fellow in that story said to her, and she said, "Would you like a cigarette?" And
Yeah, I heard about
afterwards,
that.
she just hoped he smoked.
Oh.
And he said, I love a cigarette. So she said, I'm the queen. I have to get a servant to come in. And the servant that came in with the cigarette happened to be a member of the SAS. But that's a different story from a different
That's a
play.
different, but that's an interesting story. I like that. But,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
believe it or not, on this side of the pond, we've heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, but I like this story because of the image that it does. And I've often wondered, do you tell a crazy person they're crazy? And would they be angry? Would they
Well,
accept it? And if
I
you
don't know.
lied and they knew they were crazy, But anyhow, that's my take.
Baba, I don't know. But once a fortnight, I sit and tell about 20 people they're crazy.
And you're usually right.
You have to define crazy. It's not an easy thing to define.
Well,
Diana.
I'm not
Diana.
crazy, but you're crazy, Baba. That's fair enough.
No, I'm crazy. I'm just not insane.
Okay.
See? So we're all
Right.
crazy, but most of us are not insane. And Mike's
Right.
trying to take control of the room back. So
I
it's
am,
all
yes,
yours, Mike.
because we don't want to miss out on Janet, because last but very much not least, and we've got one more story to go, and then we can start talking about who's crazy and who's insane. But if we lose the room, we'll lose it. So we're going to go to Staffordshire. We're going to go to Janet to finish up tonight. Okay, there we go.
Well, I don't know whether I'm crazy or not, Baba, but tonight I'm going to put a hex on you. A hex on you. And I tell you something else. A story starts with once upon a time, or it was a dark and stormy night. And so it was in Staffordshire, a dark and stormy night. A dark and stormy night with thunder and lightning. Oh, even more magnificent than that described by Baba C. It was really frightening. And coming home from church in his carriage from the village of Cheadle to the village of Alton, which is on the Staffordshire Chase, just on the edge of the forest, was the 15th Earl of Shrewsbury. The 15th Earl of Shrewsbury in his carriage, and he was taking the driveway to his great mansion, Alton Towers. Now, some of you will have heard of Alton Towers. You will know that it is a theme park. It is a theme park well known for its terrifying rides. And there is a terrifying ride there called the Hex. I have no intention of ever subjecting myself not only to not the Hex, but none of the terrifying rides. But this story is called The Chained Oak. And it was just as the carriage rocked past on the bumpy road, past the huge old oak tree on the way to Alton Towers, that the coachman drew up and he pulled up, the horses reared up, and the Earl was shot back in his carriage. Angry, he opened the door, he rushed out, he cursed that coachman. That is not the Hex. He just cursed him. There, standing beneath the oak tree, holding a fallen branch, was a small, brown-skinned, wrinkled woman. And she held out her hand and said, "Penny, sir, a coin, sir. I have saved you. I have saved you because I have removed this fallen branch. I have saved you." The 15th Earl of Shrewsbury just dismissed her. "You? Where'd you come from, old woman? Never seen you before. And how did you remove this heavy branch? You are just a beggar woman. You are in my way, and I curse you." And she said, "No, do not curse me, for I curse you. for your cruelty to me and for your dismissal of my kind. Every time a branch falls from this old oak tree, a member of your family will die. And in the blink of an eye, and a flash of lightning, and a clap of thunder, she disappeared, never to be seen again. The 15th Earl of Shrewsbury got back in his carriage. He commanded his horsemen to drive on to Alton Towers, and there he kicked off his boots, threw off his wet clothes, and he sat there behind his fire with that much required hot toddy. Be it rum? Probably not. Be it whiskey? Probably not. But in Staffordshire, there are caves where they brew, well, it has many a name and it tastes so good. And he drank this until he was ready to fall asleep. He staggered up the stairs to his bed and he fell into an almost stupor. But in that night, he heard the crashing of glass and a phenomenal scream. Oh, it was a scream that curdled even his cold blood. And he fell out of their bed. He hauled himself up. He went towards the sound of the scream. He opened the door. It was the door of his mother's bedroom. And there on the floor was his mother, cold, white, and dead. And against the window, the branches of the close trees had smashed the glass. The servants gossiped. There was a rumour. There was a curse. That strange woman on the roadway, she'd placed the curse. But of course, the 15th Earl of Shrewsbury was having none of that. None whatsoever. And he forbade his servants to speak of it. It was not spoken of for many years. Until another evening, there was another storm. The same sort of storm, ferocious, the lashing of rain, when the rain hits you in the face and you can't see, you can't even see the leaves moving on the trees in the wind, because your eyes will not open, but your ears hear the thunder. And there was another crash and silence. And soon a knocking at the door. And there was a servant calling, "Come, come, come, come beneath the oak tree, come." And there beneath the oak tree, with his legs trapped beneath a fallen great black stallion, a black stallion hit by a branch of the tree, was the son of the Earl of Shrewsbury. The men from the village hauled the horse away. The horse dead. There's nothing heavier than a dead horse. The son was not dead. He was healed soon enough. And the Earl of Shrewsbury cast off all the worries of the servants. There is no curse. But the seed of the curse planted over the years had grown and grown, and finally, even inside the Earl of Shrewsbury, there was a doubt. He looked up at that great old oak, and did he trust the branches more or no? And it was no. He sent down to the village. He sent for the village to cast great links to form a chain great strong chain. He got his men to wrap the chain around the branches, through the branches, until they were held firmly by that chain. And for almost 200 years, there they stayed, the iron chain wrapped around the branches. The chained oak is there. You can visit it. There's many that will not stand beneath it. And about 9 years ago, a branch fell from that tree. Inquiries were made to the Earl of Shrewsbury's family. No, there had not been a death. None in the family. None in even the extended aristocracy. No. And there are some who say, well, there was no hex, there was no curse. But for those of us who tell stories about those on the thin side of the veil, especially in Staffordshire, where the moorlands harbour many a tale, not just in Europe, many a way where we know that the Fae cannot be stronger than iron. And that iron chain is still there. And there are many who hope it stays. Who hope it stays. Thank you.
Right, so I'm going to finish it now. John's going to do a few parish notices, and we have a storytelling club in Much Wenlock if you're close to Much Wenlock. But Janet, I have something to add to that story for you.
Oh, aye.
Because the Earl of Shrewsbury mistress had a son. 10 years ago, he was killed in a car crash.
Whoops.
Okay. Oh, you obviously didn't know. We in Shropshire knew that.
Yes, but the thing about it is there was no branch, was there?
Well, it was on a road late at night. That's all we know. Yeah.
Mm.
Anyway, John, I'll hand it back over to you. The parish notices to the World Storytelling Cafe and everything else. I am going to leave you just for a second because I'm going to the toilet. So.
Well, we appreciate that information, Mike. We have just let me get everything up on the phone here so I don't make any mistakes. We've got fantastic stuff coming up this week. We have literally fantastic. It's that kind of, it's a fantastic week, isn't it? It's Halloween, All Saints Day, Day of the Dead, but it's got different names around the world, but it's all happening this week. And
Like there's no tomorrow.
yeah, so thank you. Well, Tuesday, obviously at 5 o'clock in the evening UK time, we invite all young tellers, that is anyone 25 and under or under 25, to tell a story. Hopefully we'll have some in again from Marrakesh. We had some last week and Kamal brought them, they were fantastic. And then Friday, we've got a Halloween special with David Heathfield hosts a special event from around there's different tellers from around the world, and it is entitled Other World Beings. I don't have the list of tellers on my in front of me at the moment. Despina, do you know?
Well, I do know there are some of the educators who had the crest together under David Heathfield. So there is Gustavo from Peru, and there is Rashida from Nigeria. There is a girl from Greece, and Elpida, I don't remember surnames, and a few others. Those are the ones I remember right now. It's going to be wonderful.
Yeah. So is that Despina? Is she going to be doing something? Do you think?
What Despina is that?
Oh, that'd be that person who's sitting there talking at the moment.
Well,
Wow. Okay, yeah, yours truly. Yours truly, you mean?
yeah, no, our favourite Despina. That's the one we've got.
And then on next Sunday, we don't normally do 2 Sundays on the trot, but because as well as being Halloween, it is the end of Black History Month in the UK. So we're doing a Black History Month special hosted by Baden Prince, and there'll be a certain Baba C on that because and Yusufu's coming on. Those are the 3 we know about. We're trying to get hold of Shola and someone who hasn't been on before, Aleem, but people are talking about him a lot at the moment. So I'm really hoping he comes on. So that's the rest of this week, but that's next Sunday again at the same time at 7 o'clock. So we have, and of course the Sunday afterwards we'll be back here and we'll all be telling tales. And
well, I'm going to start off the first one next month, in 2 weeks' time, because I haven't told one for a couple of weeks. So I'm going to start it off myself next time. But
right.
John, are you doing anything with the young storytellers from Wales and Aberystwyth?
not that I know of.
Right.
They haven't been in touch.
Well, they've been in touch with me yesterday, and I think they think that I'm the link to you. So you and I need to talk. Okay?
Well, they can come on any Tuesday.
That's what I
5
said.
o'clock. All they have to do is hit the gold button.
That's what I said. Okay. Anyway, it's been a pleasure having you all here again. Okay. So 2 weeks' time, we'll all be back here again. And I can't do this without you turning up and telling stories like it. And we've had some wonderful stories tonight. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Can I second that, Mike? Tonight has been a classic night. It's been fantastic. Everyone has been amazing. So thank you all.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's why we do it, John, isn't it? For nights like this.
Well,
Okay.
yes, it
Okay.
is. It's us.
It's us.
And thank you, Waleed, as
Thank you,
always,
Waleed. Okay,
for
well,
driving, for flying the magic carpet.
yeah, and I'm going to be sitting on it in a couple of weeks' time, Waleed. I'm coming in your direction, mate. Okay.
Okay, and I'll get there first to lock the doors.
Oh, if you want some heckling, mate, you're picking on the wrong person.
Okay. Well, on that, I'm going to say good night to everyone. Good
Good night. Good night.
Good afternoon.
Hey, everyone. Thank you very
But-
much. Good night.
I know it's dark
Night.
on your side. When you guys finish, I feel like I should be going to bed. But it's it's noon. Well, it's about 3 o'clock now. But anyhow, thank
Baba,
you.
Do you still, Baba, do you talk in your sleep? Do you
Um,
talk in your sleep?
Only in my dreams. And but to answer that question, I one of my sisters used to ask me for money when I was asleep. And I used to say sure and tell her where it was. And I kept wondering why my money was short. So no, now if you talk to me when I'm asleep, you get nada. Not one thing from me. Nada. But I did negotiate a contract
I
once
just
in my
thought-
sleep.
I just
Can
thought
we,
it must
can we
be
have
keep
you on?
going.
Can we have you on here next time you're asleep?
Ladies, I love you. You're so charming and beautiful and intelligent, and you're great tellers. And that is no tale. All
Thank
right,
you,
Waleed,
Baba.
you're wonderful
Thanks,
too.
guys. Thank you again for hosting.
All right.
Bye.
Good night, everyone. Until the next time. Waleed, click that button.
Yes.
Thank you, Waleed. Take care. Tell everybody else hello.
See.
See out.
out.